this topic came up next. Storytelling. This was a short notice topic. Somebody came up to me actually at the last social media breakfast and said, I have an idea, what do you think? And took it to the committee, and we all thought it was a great idea. It took us a little bit of time and a huge amount of help from Stacy to put together. We decided we thought it would be nice to have a panel to talk about storytelling. And so Stacy is going to moderate the panel today, and the format's going to be, we have a couple of, we have some questions that we're looking for the panelists to address, and then we're going to open it up so any questions that you may have, okay? Now, next, I'm going to let Stacy, really super excited about the panelists that Stacy was able to find, and I'm going to let Stacy introduce the panelists if you don't mind, Stacy. Thank you so much. But Paul, Luke, and Shannon, just thrilled that you guys could come today.
So just yelling next. All right, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I'm sure you guys can read there, so let's actually go to the next slide here, and I'll just go right into the introductions. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to start off with Paul Bezzetta. So if you want to come to the stage, Paul. All right, so as you can see here, top 40 under 40, president of Kicker Inc., an Emmy-winning video production, digital media, and communications firm. So Paul's here. Yes, in the spotlight. So Paul's here actually representing the corporate viewpoints. So a lot of his clients are looking for stuff that is, you know, it can go on multiple platforms that we need to figure out, is it going to be online accessible, formatting, the messaging being appropriate for every tool to be used. So that's really what his perspective is going to be from, plus of course his background in broadcast television as well. So as you guys can see at the very bottom, just before we move on, you can see it's www.kickerinc.ca, just so you guys, if you want to follow up afterwards. And it's got a great website, actually, worth checking out. Next slide, please. Okay, so then we have Luke Azevedo, if I can welcome you to the stage, sir. All right, and as you can see, Commissioner of Film, TV, and Creative Industries. So Luke has actually spent quite a few years working alongside myself back when I was, everything from, you know, the coffee girl to wherever else I've made it to in my film career, which has been great. And so through those years, Luke's actually always been a phone call away. And he's been able to amass an amazing amount of experience and knowledge just from conversations with people, as well as his own extensive work in those industries. So we're really excited to have his perspective here as well on the panel. Next slide, please. All right, and then last but not least, we have Shannon Hoover, if you want to come to the stage, sir. Excellent. Now Shannon's our wild card, if you will, because he actually founded with his wife Endeavor Art Gallery, which is just over on 1st and 12th there. Now, the reason that I like Endeavor Art Gallery is they actually do a lot of work with independent artists and project because they do have stationary projectors. So it's not just static art on the wall, they actually have moving art. And so he's working with a lot of digital artists on the independent side. Plus, he's also been a major part of Maker Faire, which is, you know, one of the major events that's just launched this year in Calgary for the first time, that talks about collaborative storytelling, whether it's, you know, from an engineering perspective or an actual online communications perspective. So, I give you our panel for today. If we can give a hand. Okay, and do we want to go to the next slide, please? Do we have the questions here so everybody can follow along? Oh, and that's me. So just in case you didn't realize, I'm the founder of Alberta Buzz and also of Ray Dance Calgary, which is another brand I brought in to this town. Now, what we do essentially is a provincial online cultural industries trade publication. So what that means is we don't do film reviews, we do filmmaker reviews. We'll talk about how things are made. We'll try and make it accessible so people know what's being made in this province, how it's being made, what it's doing for our businesses, for our economy, and for our filmmakers and storytellers. So that's where obviously my passion lies. Next slide, please. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Now the first question we have here is obviously the future of communications and storytelling is changing rapidly. What is your take on the growth in your specific area? And what's hot in the social network world? Anybody want to start with that one first?
Sure. I don't actually think it's changing. It's actually changed. There was a time a while back where the talk was about convergence, which is taking all the different disciplines and all the different technologies and utilizing those technologies to deliver your message. And that's actually happened. It's the reality of our world. If you're a filmmaker or a storyteller these days and you're looking for somebody to fund something, you're looking for grants, you're looking for opportunities, walking into any environment where you don't have multiple ROIs that are based around social media, websites, ways of connecting with people that particularly don't have to be an area that you're monetizing a project, but need to be an area where you can connect and create an environment for communication and exposure of whatever you're doing. It's harder to have people take you seriously these days. So it's also become in a lot of companies, and I think Paul faces this on a daily basis, is that to not have specialists in your world that can actually apply these pieces to your production process or to your exposure process becomes very difficult. But what that then starts to do is to add cost to running your organization, because you potentially need to have people on full time. And I think what we're starting to see now is that the corporate world is adapting to this. They have to. It's sort of a do or die at this point. That's how people follow you. That's how people interact with you and engage with you. So in my world, it's a necessity. This isn't an option anymore. If you're coming into an environment where you are producing a project, or whether it's digital media, or whether it's a film project or television project, you better have all the pieces in place, and you better have a way to connect those dots, or it's going to be very difficult to make it successful.
Did anybody else have any questions or anything?
Sure. Sorry, I just sort of feel like I'm being interrogated.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Where's your papers? That's what it feels like to me. Storytelling in many ways, particularly digital storytelling, I feel like it's the new black. It's just what everyone gets it, everyone understands it, and the wonderful thing about this crowd today is that everyone gets social media, so they understand it, and we're certainly not up here to educate anyone on that, that's for sure, but social storytelling to me, in my world as well, it's all about video, it's about emotion, it's about inspiring people, it's about motivating people, and if you're not doing that, regardless of what you do, whether you work for the big, bad, dirty oil company, or you work for a startup out of your basement, that is what you have to do. And I think that's, we're in a bit of the golden times as content creators. There's a lot of you out there that I've seen and who I know. This is the best time to be in this business. So it's a great time.
Yeah, we're in the wild, wild west of social media right now. My day job, I work for a company called WestJet. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. One of the interesting things about WestJet is a couple years ago, we started using social media, and I got to know Greg Hunslow, the guy that has been handling it. And it was a highly experimental process for him, but what he was able to do is give WestJet a personality from a corporate perspective. And I think that's just so critically important. It doesn't matter if you're a small company or a large company, but you want to be able to give people something that they can connect to kind of almost on a peer level. Marketing 20 years ago, it used to be lots of ads. It was average ideas, but now with social media, it's allowed us to connect more specifically with people. It's allowed us to have smaller groups and more innovative ideas, and have it be more of a kind of a one-to-one experience, and you're able to connect with people in a very, very real way. I follow a Twitter feed where I watch what people are saying about WestJet and other airlines, and it's very interesting to see. You can see just from the responses how people are doing, and a number of positive responses, or a number of positive conversations that you have come out of companies that that are providing a really, really strong personal experience for people. This year we hosted the first Maker Faire, as Stacey mentioned. One of the things that I just found so kind of compelling about that experience was that there's a group of, if you're not familiar with Maker Faire, it's a little bit hard to understand. It's a festival of, it's kind of a cross between a do-it-yourself festival and a science fair and a show and tell or something. But it's all about creativity and innovation. You get people that are there showing their art projects off, and people there showing their robots off, and people there with lasers, and people in costumes. And it's just a really kind of, the people that attended were all, you know, wandering through the area, just blown away at the creativity that exists in our city. And for me, that, you know, that was really inspiring. But from the social media perspective, there's all these groups of people, very, very diverse groups of people that really didn't know each other existed, and without a way to kind of connect, you know, Seth Godin put it well. He talks about tribes. So you get a group of people that have a very, very specific passion, and they're able to share that passion with each other. And, you know, it's no longer, you know, kind of a big group of people that are perceived to be the same personality or that have the same desires or wants. It's about groups of people that have specific passions. And Maker Faire is really, it kind of exhibits that. You have an event where people are just telling stories about what their passions are. And I think that's one of the things that social media is currently changing. Is it's, you know, when the internet first came about, the perception was that it would turn us all into one big, like we would all be the same. Because it's all shared knowledge now, we all have the same information and education, culture will be gone, and we'll no longer be individuals. And that couldn't be more wrong. What we're seeing is these groups of passionate people come out, and they're able to tell their stories.
That's excellent, Sean. So just to summarize, I think what we were taking a look at for the take of growth is there really, you know, is more of an establishment rather than growth period right now. And it's really just building and strengthening its foundation. And then we also have that that it's actually bringing disparate groups together, whether it's, you know, separated geographically or just simply from interests. That's actually really big in the world. And the other thing that we talked about was, sorry, just trying to summarize here. We were talking about take on growth. Oh, right. And at the end of the day, we're still talking that there needs to be a personality. There still needs to be something to connect to. So I think that that's really interesting. Now, what I actually want to bridge that to, so with what's hot in the social network world. Now, with what you're saying about actually bringing the disparate groups together, I think that that's actually mutating from what I've seen actually in different areas. And the example I'm going to actually start out with here is Cyber Summit that's happening here in Banff at the beginning of October. They're actually getting one of the founders of the world's first co-op, if you want to think of it, a collective, that's actually working on cancer-fighting drugs. Based in social media, came about because of social media. The company is doing, you know, the innovation in the workplace, work shift kind of stuff where, you know, everybody's obviously from a remote workstation, but they're all working collectively because of social media on something for culture good. And that's, you know, beyond our Indiegogo or, you know, we talk a lot about social giving and that kind of thing. So I find that for me, what's hot in the social network world is kind of what we touched on, which is using the strengths of social media to strengthen the footwork on the ground that's happening. So I'm curious to hear from you guys that what would your idea be, or an example of what's grabbing your interest as something that's new and hot in social media?
Really? Okay. Well, it depends on what you mean by new. I mean, what's new anymore? There's no such thing as new media anymore. I mean, it's really what it transitions into. We have tools now, and those tools are a way to a means. So it's how you utilize them. I think the biggest impact from my perspective, excuse me, has been how instantaneous it is, how the communication is right now, how you don't have to wait for things, everybody gets instant gratification, which is good and bad. The old days, it used to be what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Now it's what happens in Vegas goes on Facebook. It's kind of how it works, right? And at the same time, you start looking at how what goes on the internet stays there forever as well. So there's some really positive things that come from that, but there's also some negatives that come from that. And we've seen it. We've seen what it does to people. We've seen what it does to places. In some ways, very positive. I think it was interesting to me when you start talking about how the social media has really started to change how we look at our culture and look at the way that we live. And there was a bus driver somewhere in New York that was getting harassed by these kids. It's this woman, a 7-year-old woman. And they started this campaign where they wanted to send her away for a holiday. And she just collected a check for $700,000 because of the amount of people that got involved in this and followed her and had that feeling for her. So it's interesting how this is really starting to change how we see our culture and how we interact with our culture. So I think that's, for me, a big shift.
And just on that, why did she receive such, such a high dollar fund? What was it that inspired so many people to puff up to exactly? So what you saw was a video. You had the sort of the classic storylines in there that we all try to bring out for our customers or for our own business. You've got the beginning, the middle, the end. You've got the protagonist, you've got the antagonist, you've got these subplots, you've got the hero at the end, and then we all dive into those things, right? And so one of the things that we see and what we're asked on a daily basis from our customers is, how do we tell these stories that we want to get out, and how do we get them, get engagement on social media? And at the end of the day, for us, it comes back to old marketing 101, right? You have to go back to our textbooks and don't think about, what story should we tell? You need to go back to, what's your brand values, what's your principles, what do you really stand for? Start there, create a story, send it out on social media channels, and then create a two-way communication. Social media for a lot of our customers, we deal with a lot of the big HMOs in the US, Kaiser Permanente, Tenet Health, etc. Social media for those guys is a little bit of a, they're not on it, they're not into it, right? And there's a variety of reasons for that. Everybody in this group probably knows what those are because they use it as a broadcasting platform and not an engagement platform. And so what we try to help them do is, using video, is to create patient stories, to create success stories, and to go out and actually look for things that you can attach the brand to, values that are the same as yours. And so I think what's hot in social media is this realization among companies and brands that you need to go out and actually find shared values with people and start conversations with them. And the best way to do that, or at least certainly from my unbiased opinion, is to use video.
How many people here know who Mr. Splashy Pants is?
We got one.
There's one, I think. The humpback whales were being hunted by a group of Japanese whalers, and Greenpeace decided that they were going to try and name the whales, and they put GPS trackers in them and were showing where they were, and they were going to name the whales. And so somebody from Reddit, if you're familiar with Reddit, it's a social news aggregator. Is that how you say it? That word. And they suggested using the name Mr. Splashy Pants. And of course it went viral, and it got posted on fark.com and Reddit and a whole bunch of other websites. And pretty soon the votes for Mr. Splashy Pants were like, 1,000 times more than anybody else, than any of the other names that Greenpeace wanted to suggest. So Greenpeace decided they were going to redo the contest. Of course, that's a terrible idea on social media, because people just got more incensed, and Mr. Splashy Pants got even greater, following. But what was interesting? Greenpeace ended up using that name, and they made T-shirts. But all of a sudden, they had engaged with probably about 1,000 times the number of people than they could have possibly done it on their own. And they did it by losing control. They did it by not being able to, or not, I guess, forgetting that concept of controlling the context of the conversation and just engaging in it. And I think that's one of the things that your clients probably could use a little bit of help with is you have to be willing to lose control in today's kind of environment of social media. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not going to be engaging with people properly. And you want to contribute to the story. You're no longer controlling the narrative. And used to be, the people the CEOs were kings of their domains, and that's no longer the case. We're expected to treat people like individuals and like people, and I think that's, that concept of losing control or not being afraid to lose control is, I think, a really important contemporary, concept.
Can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so what makes your social engagement successful at its current continent or current status, and why does it work? So the other nice thing about these three gentlemen is that they're all very unique in how they use their social media tools. Not one is alike the other, and they've found ways that work for them. So I just want you guys to actually speak a little bit about what you guys do for social media and why it works for you. Let's start with
Sure. I don't want to talk so much about me, but more about how our customers are using it. I think would probably provide value to the group here would be, all right, so what are some of the bigger customers that we have, you know, whether they're American or US customers, what are they asking for with respect to social media? And more importantly, what are they asking for on how to tell digital stories? And, you know, really, quite often customers will contact us and say, look, you know, we need to do this video, it's going to be a one-off, and, you know, how much? And so we'll give them that number, of course, but we'll also say, well, why don't you actually come up with a larger plan where you might be able to actually use it for other things other than just HR recruitment campaign or whatever. And so what we often tell our customers is say, look, you know, create a number of them, create this bread fan of content that you can distribute over a period of time in an attempt, and I know it's difficult and hard to do this, but to attempt to control your conversation on social media. Because if you allow your audience, your constituency, to do all of the talking, then you do lose control of the conversation. It's my view that you can control to a certain extent the conversation if you give them the tools or the pieces of content they can actually latch onto. And the only way to do that, to latch onto and actually start to come your way, is to make them inspiring, make them emotional, and make them personal. And don't forget about the tenets of storytelling, beginning, middle, and end. And keep them tight, keep them concise, and it works. There's some great success stories about it.
So you're looking at video as more of a campaign then?
No, campaign is, sorry, video is part of it.
So,
Part of
but
the
it's
larger
part of
campaign.
a
That's right, it's not
larger
the only thing that you do. We believe, we have some customers, SiriusXM's another one that talks a lot about where they have internal conversations about should we apply more of our budget, marketing budget this year to social media, or should we start doing some videos and video marketing? And to me, you can't make it a simple distinction like that. It's all part of the same thing. These are just different tool sets that you funnel people down into your central goal, whatever that might be for that quarter, that year.
Sorry, what was the question again? It was successful. We, as an art gallery, my wife and I started Endeavour Arts 2.5 years ago, and this whole, you know, we came into it, we wanted to try something a little bit new, but we came into it really not having any clue what we were doing. That has its downsides, obviously, but it also has its upsides. It means that we're not afraid to experiment and try new things. And I think one of the big things that we've discovered is we're not in a business of selling artwork, we're in a business of building community. And if we can have people that are engaged in what we do and are passionate, share our passion in what we do, and we promote them and they promote us, then that's really what's made us successful above and beyond anything else. Maker Faire was exactly the same thing. If we wouldn't have, you know, it's so dependent on just connecting with people, building community, having them tell their stories, you tell their stories, and then they'll tell your stories.
Well, we've got, in my world, there's sort of three different areas that people try to achieve success. There's, you know, you'd be looking at, an example would be Universal Studios would be putting an outward message that's not really about collaboration, but it's sort of an advertising message about Born Identity and coming out, what it's doing, where it's going to be, why you should go and watch it. Then you have groups that are the indigenous producers that are really just trying to bring attention to what they're doing and how they're interacting with their community and what they're building. And then you would have, you know, from my perspective, when I'm out on a set or something where I'm starting to ensure that we put out messaging about what we're doing in Alberta and how great we are here. And, you know, so it's three different aspects. And success is based on what in social media? Is it the number of people that are actually following you? Is it based on how much communication you're having with them? Is it an interactive thing? I mean, there's a variety of ways to measure it. And I think it's going to be individuals will, and groups and people will find different ways to measure that success. You know, I think from my perspective, one of the things, and it's been said here a little bit now, is, and in two different ways. I mean, Paul's message was about clients having the confidence that they can control their message enough that they'll engage in social media. From the perspective of what Shannon's saying, it's good to try to lose some of that control. In my world, we never take it for granted that there is any control. Because depending on what the message that goes out and the amount of people that are reacting to it and who those people are, that message could be out of control very quickly. So unless you're defining that control parameter, which you need to with some of your corporate clients, it's very difficult to control what people are going to react to out in the world. Once you put that message out there, it never comes back. You don't have that option. So you got to be a little bit more careful. It's like the old analogy, right? Don't tweet when you're drunk. Okay, it's not a good thing. Okay? So it's just you know, it's a process that you've got to really understand what it is that you're looking for before you put that message out. And you've got to understand that if that message goes and the wrong people tag to it, the response may not be exactly what you want. So it's willing to be able to do that. So I think success gets measured a variety of different ways.
And, you know, ultimately, just be authentic. You know, sort of you have to be authentic. What the hell does that mean? But, you know, as long as you're truthful to your brand's principles and your values, at the end of the day, that's all you can do. And there'll always be haters. To hell with them. Really, that's what we tell our customers. Just be truthful to what you do. Be authentic. Try to do the best you can to bring authenticity to your social media efforts or to any of your marketing messages. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that story is a living, breathing thing. It changes as soon as it goes from person to person, from, you know, input to how they take it in. And it changes each and every time. So I mean, as long as, and I love how Paul emphasizes the values, because the values are going to be what keeps people engaged in the conversation. And from a social media perspective, it's the easiest way to multiply your effect. What we're always looking for is those pools of conversation to have an impact in, right? We're looking for our influencers. We're looking for matching up our stories with who's going to want to talk about it, who's going to want to share it, who's going to turn it into wildfire. And so looking at a story as a static element does not work for anybody. However, if you look at that story as the kernel that, you know, sparks a new conversation, continues, and like you're saying, campaign, there's not one element or tool that's going to make something work. What you're going to have is a story that's built on values that resonate with your brand, that's going to be able to mold and adapt as the conversation continues and grows, which I think is what we're all getting to here. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so where do you see our future communications going, besides the everything in your glasses comment, which we normally get right away with these. But personally, what I'd like to actually hear, and for our audience, I think we'd really like to hear, is that future communications going to, whether it's going to not necessarily be a tool reliance, but like we were saying, how the behavior patterns are changing. Is that going to get worse? Is it going to get different? How do you see that adapting over the next little while? Let's start with that one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I think one of the, like we're seeing a trend and an evolution. Things are becoming kind of less, they're more personalized. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to continue to see is things are going to be more and more targeted to individuals. Our devices are going to be kind of part of our personality. We're not cyborgs yet, but we're heading that direction. You know, there's going to be a lot more location-based services. There's going to be context-based services. So even now, like with this device, when I'm getting ready to leave work, it shows me how long it's going to take me to get home. And it, without me asking or doing anything, I just turn the screen on and it knows that 5 o'clock is coming near, and it shows me a map, and the red spots are spots that I need to avoid, and that's how I get home. Now you tie that kind of thing to advertising, you know, the device, your device becomes context aware, a little bit creepy, but it's maybe a lot creepy. But your device starts to know things about you and starts to predict things about you. When I was in Mexico, it popped open on the front screen a Spanish to English translation dictionary. I don't know how it knows I can't speak Spanish, but I can't. It gave me a currency converter, and it knows where I am and starts to know things about me. And you know, and if from an advertiser's perspective, or somebody that's engaging people, you know, you're going to be able to kind of develop parameters. If people are in our rules, if people are in this situation, then engage them this way. You know, as you walk, you know, if you're, okay, maybe this isn't a good story because my phone won't know if my shoe is broken or not, but shoe is broken, you walk past the shoe store and there's an advertisement for the shoe store, right? That kind of one-to-one personal engagement is, I think, where we're going to see things in.
I agree with that. I think that there's a couple of things. I think in my world, it's always about how you can get a face-to-face, how you can have engagement with the person and be able to see their emotions, the look on their face as you're talking to them and presenting something to them, and see how they react to how you're engaging with them. So that's important. And I think a lot of the tools are starting to go more and more that direction, where you can have a closer engagement without having to be there on the spot. So we're seeing a lot of that. And the personalization of devices as well. I mean, it opens up and tells you and does whatever those things are because you've kind of pre-programmed it to do that. That's going to become a lot simpler. It's just going to become inherent in what we're doing on a daily basis. The phones won't need to be carried. They're going to be part of what you wear or what you're doing. It's interesting that we've kind of gone, I've done a bit of a full circle. There was a time when I was at the Banff Center where I was working with Sarah Diamond, and anybody that's ever met her, she's a very eclectic lady, but very futuristic thinking, and that used to freak people out in the 90s when she was talking about how the internet was going to do what we're doing right now, and they were like, wow, this chick is weird. Guess what? She was right, you know, and now she runs OCAD. So it's, but at the time we were doing things like building video for mobile devices, having wearable technologies where if you're, for example, if you're a diabetic and your clothes can sense when you need your insulin, or when, you know, those kind of things, or if you have a heart problem where your clothes will start to change color when you have some kind of arrhythmia. There was all those things that were going on back there that were very cyborg, futuristic looking, which now are there. And we've gone different directions, but I think that's what we're starting to see, is that it's becoming smaller, more personalized, and giving you an opportunity to be in a more direct contact without actually being there.
For me, the future is just, honestly, it's digital storytelling across platforms, and the opportunity for all of us in this room is low-cost technology, low barrier to entry, ease of use, all of these cool software programs that come installed with your Mac or whatever is really all you need. It may sound weird coming from a professional video producer, but that's really what you need. You should only be paying guys like me if you want something elaborate and you want the certain
Bring
look
out
at the
the
strategy.
drones.
Yeah, bring out. Yeah, we've got robotic helicopters that we fly around. Just finished some for CTV last week. So specialized, yes, but you know the future is use these tools. Just do it, like you said. Just get out there, do it. There is no good approach to doing it. Patton said, you know, a decent plan violently executed today is better than a great plan tomorrow. And to me, that's my view on digital storytelling, that you need to just get out and start doing it. Don't make it a one-off. Don't have your clients go out and pitch them on a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 video, because it's just not necessary. Pitch them on doing multiple short videos that accomplish specific strategic goals in the marketing plan throughout the course of the year. And for sales, use it all the way down the sales funnel from from the attraction component right to the close. Nonprofits, it's the same way. We have a lot of success in doing short social media campaigns for nonprofits, and that is a real terrific case for all of us to sort of get our feet wet, for sure.
I can just add too, technology becomes more successful when it becomes invisible. So the less that we have, excuse me, the less that we have to use or program or be an expert on the technology, the more successful it's becoming. And we're seeing that with people's grandparents' first computer being an iPad. All of a sudden, the technology is so usable and so invisible that anybody can use it. My dog plays with my iPad, so she successfully figured out the user interface for it. That says something about technology. And it's only going to get more and more invisible. As Luke was saying, wearable technologies, we're doing an event where we're teaching designers how to sew in electronics into clothing. Yeah, wearable technologies is kind of the next revolution. Current revolution is mobile technology. Next is wearable. Next is cyborgs.
Just, I guess one more thing for me. I came from a world where back in the day, it was all about equipment. It was about the technology. We had ABC roll machines. We had switchers the size, of the stage. We had rooms the size of this room to fill to be able to do storage.
All different varieties of tape decks.
Yeah, so it's ridiculous. So it gets to the point now where I think we need to ensure that whatever direction we're taking, that you continue to have in your mindset that technology is a way to a means. That's all it should be. I mean, at this point, what's important is who's telling the story or conveying the information and how they're doing it. That will never be lost. The comment is, and it's cliche, is that content is king and queen, right? That's what it is. But it's the effort in getting it out there should just be a way to a means. That's how it should be looked at.
All right, so with that, I know we're getting a little late in the morning, so I'm going to actually turn it over to some Q&A from the audience. So I'm going to grab the microphone. Who's got some questions? All right, feel free to come on up to the stage.
Yeah.
Well, I can try to see if I can come up there.
Oh no!
Maybe you
Let's
could
see how long it stretches.
Here you go. So I just had a question about if you guys use one voice for your social media, or you have several people posting on behalf of a corporation, and because that's hard. Because for marketing, you're trying to have a consistent voice. However, shouldn't you be telling different stories?
Sure. Not so much, shouldn't be about people, should be about values. And make sure that whoever's on that team has the same, they're on the same marching orders,
Okay.
right? So that's the way a lot of our customers handle it. And
Just
there's
one
also,
person.
I mean, everyone in this is a social media room, sort of telling stuff that people already know, but there are a lot of companies out there that's all they do is just monitor tags, key phrases, and engage your audience for $200 a month. Or, I'm aware of a lot of those. And so you could hire it out, or you could have a professional do it in-house. But remember, yeah, just keep it about the marching orders and the plan and the messages, and not so much about the amount of people.
We have two ways that we go about it. We have, everybody has their own individual scenarios, and then from the company perspective, we have sector experts that have been designated to be able to communicate the message for their individual sector. What's funny though is that at the beginning of Twitter, and even into today, you would see people actually putting on their Twitter feed or their Twitter info saying, my tweets are my own, they don't belong to the corporation. Well, that's crap, because you work for the corporation, so people are going to connect you whether you like it or not. So that's why in our world we try to differentiate between personal and corporate.
Okay.
I think brand is more important than anything right now. Apple has kind of showed us how a strong brand can change the world. And I think any company, I know with the gallery, Maria does most of the tweeting. I do some of it. With Maker Faire, we had two of us that were doing it as well. And we didn't hide it or try and show that we were one or the other. As long as we establish a brand and then make sure people stand brand.
I was going to say, yeah, that's really important. The companies that I work for as well, it ends up being quite a collaboration. So as I'm sure as you can tell with Alberta Buzz, it's all volunteers. I also work with Digital Alberta, which is a provincial nonprofit. All of it's volunteers. So you don't really get the luxury of dictating, this one person's going to do it, because you've got to be able to cycle people through on a very, consistent basis. And like we were saying up here, where it's values and making sure they know know it from the get-go. Get everybody on the same page. Because what I find, especially when you're doing a lot of social media, you're looking for certain conversation pools, everybody tweets a little differently. They have their own stylistic choices, and sometimes that's what needs to, whether it's going to be your industry experts or sector, experts, so maybe it's just going to be, people that just have a certain type of conversation where you know that it's going to connect better to a different generation, right? So, but then that way you can actually leverage their strengths based on them all being on the same page as far as your values and branding. Does that make sense? Excellent. Next question.
I don't need the mic. What do you think of how traditional media is coping, is the word I'd use, with social media and its rise?
Well, I got a good story for that one. So one of the events that we're fairly heavily engaged with is the Banff World Media Festival. And this brings together, in the last few years specifically, has brought together what's called Next Media, which is all about social and digital media production and output, and the broadcasters and the film producers and the studios. So there was a time a few years ago, I was just leaving the Banff Center. It was going to be my last year there, and we're sitting on top of the conference roof where everybody hangs out kind of near the end, and they're smoking. And at this point, they still had a division between Next Media and Banff. It was still the Banff Television Festival and Next Media. So what would happen is, because the social media folks, usually younger folks, okay, usually I say, couldn't really afford to be at Banff for the whole thing, they would do those first couple of days, and then they would leave at one point, and the television area would start. So that particular day, I was up on the roof with a bunch of younger folks who were wearing jeans, they're runners, they've got a backpack with about 20 grand worth of technology in it, and a jacket, and getting ready to leave because Next Media was over. And I watched them as they walked down, and they're all engaged and interactive and talking and all hyped about where their world was going to become. And then I look across the street, and I see 4 execs from CBC, pasty-faced old white guys in bad suits walking up the other side. And as they crossed at that point, that to me was an area that I started to think, that's the transition. So that was 4 years ago. This past year, what has happened is that, or 5 years ago, this past year, everything's integrated. It's the Banff World Media Festival. Now they're talking, engaging, and they know from both sides that they've got to work with each other. The standard broadcast folks are not going away. We may think they are, but they're not. Bell, Rogers, Shaw have now engaged in the broadcast world. They've not just the digital media world. They've taken over all the standard broadcast facilities. So now you have 4 broadcasters in the country, 3 of them owned by cable companies. So the collaboration has to be there. There's no question. There's still content creators, and there's still methodologies in which to get that content out, whether it's by copper or whether it's over the air or satellite or whatever technology they're utilizing. But those 2 areas have to integrate, and they know it, and that's the game that's starting to be played right now.
Television isn't dead. It's not. Linear television is dead. There's a big difference. If anyone tells you TV's dead, it's a bold-faced liar. There's more people watching television today than there ever has been. Television is what gives us ideas on what to watch online and when we want to watch online. And so a lot of our broadcast clients will ask us, how can we be using social media to let people know about a news story that's coming up or about a specific promotion that's happening? And the challenge still remains. There's still a lot of old pasty white guys in suits running the place, and they just don't get it. They have legacy systems, legacy equipment that they need to continue to monetize. And quite frankly, it's not in their best interest at nearing the age of retirement to shake the boat and try something new and different. And I can tell you right now that it frustrates the living hell out of the younger people who work in these stations who do see a future with traditional broadcasting, for sure.
If I can, just one more thing though. There's a point though that we have to understand, is that the investment in the R&D and the investment in that technology was so huge that there has to be a time frame in which they can monetize it and actually get a return on that investment. And that's the only way that they're going to be able to move into the new realms. So there's a patience level that has to be there. And we, for the first time in history over the last few years, we're actually moving faster than the technology is. The consumption and the want is moving faster. Back in the day, you were in a position where you were on your computer and it would basically tell you what to do and you would follow along. Now we're the ones that they're engaging with to find out what the new technologies are going to be because of what we want to consume. So there's an area there that has to transition for the broadcasters to be able to engage at the level that the younger folks want to see it go. And it's coming. I mean, it's coming quicker than we know. And they're starting to understand that that's the reality of the world. And that's, you know, the consumption of, as Paul said, the consumption of material is no longer on your 50-inch plasma. You're watching sports or something specific. The majority of folks now are getting their information off their mobile devices. And whatever that device is, there's a variety of them. So.
And that's broadcasting today anyway, to
Yeah.
guys like us.
Yeah.
What is broadcasting? It isn't TV anymore. Broadcasting is everything.
It's an output.
That's right.
I can't speak from a content creator perspective, but I consider myself to be an early adopter, and it's excessively clear to me that the companies that are able to be agile are the companies that are going to be showing more success than others. I haven't had a TV for years, and I consume, not that I don't consume it, I do. I'm a very strong consumer of media, but I go to different websites, and I have been known to download the occasional TV show, and sometimes, most of the time. But you know what's interesting to me is I'm seeing Kia's done a great job of putting ads inside of the TV show. And so people are driving along and you see the logos and you see people use the nav system. And I know Microsoft tried to do their Windows Phone in a few episodes that I saw. They did a really bad job. I think, taste is still important. But yeah, I mean, people are finding different ways to carry their their advertising message. And with those changes, I think people are going to start seeing success. We're it's the Wild West of the internet right now. So.
I think also something to remember from Shannon's perspective is he still showcases in the gallery, stills, drawings, oils, pastels, acrylics. You're still going to get every type of art possible while you still have the means to create that type of art. You're not going to shut down painting just because it's not in fashion anymore. I'm sorry, it's just not going to work that way. And for the same reasons, we're always going to have print. We're always going to have a type of newspaper. We're going to have a type of television system. There's going to be those systems in place because they were there for a reason. And just like the Book Publishers Association, the Magazine Publishers Associations, they're all changing and integrating like we're saying here. However, the mediums are not going away by any means. Next question. Going all the way to the back.
I'm Sean Stevenson at creative_Sean on Twitter. Please follow me.
There's your message.
A big part of my job is to create videos and other content for social media. And I'm kind of old school, TV film background where I love production quality. How important is that going forward? Or should I be letting go of that production quality? Should I be shooting everything on my iPhone?
I'm familiar with a pilot that was done here in town for the Food Network that was shot on the iPhone 4.
Wow.
So content is what's the most important, the message, the value that you're getting across. Sure, we're particularly Luke and I, we come from a 24-piece cinematic, blah 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 blah, and it's nice for a TV. That's what all the brands want because they think that's what their bosses want to hear, and this is what the awards that they want to win for. My view on it for a video is to just get it done. As I've said earlier, just do it, and I think you're in a great space right now, particularly with creating any kind of media. Audio PowerPoints to me is digital storytelling. Do you know what I mean? If it accomplishes the goal at the end of the day, that's what you should do. So always try to elevate, always try to separate yourself from everybody else who has an iMac and a flip camera, but just keep doing it.
I think I agree with Paul with the content component of it. I think the way that I would approach it, and the way that we're seeing a lot of folks approach it, is shoot at the highest quality possible so that you have an evergreen product. So if you can afford to be shooting on a Phantom or Alexa, do it. And then what you do is you downgrade the quality of your product based on what the output needs to be. So if you're going to go to some place that's going to only give you 300 kilobits a second to be able to receive it, you don't have to do Alexa type of quality. However, if you have that product and somewhere down the road, you have the capacity to be generating it in a way that will accept that quality, that's what you want to do. So if your budget dictates that you got to do iPhone and your content is fantastic, produce it on the iPhone. If your budget dictates that you can go at the top level, then you grab that and then you bring it down to the levels you need to as you open.
Thank you, guys.
Next question?
Yeah, sorry, just the very famous Travel Alberta spot, shot on the Phantom and Alexa.
Called Epic.
Yeah, it's called, yeah. That's a great use for that, to spend, $100,000 a day shooting this stuff. So you have it over a long period of time. But when it comes for your client, Bill's Plumbing down the road, clearly that's not going to work. And so that was the reason for my, just get out there and do it.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing, but I think at the same time, it's like it's relative, right? Budgets are going to dictate. We watched filmmakers now. 90% of what you're seeing, even with people like Chris Nolan's and Scorsese's, is that these are folks that came out of the film world, 35 mil, 70 mil. They're still outputting, in many instances, still outputting it that way because there's not enough digital cinema to do it, but they're not shooting it that way anymore. I mean, cost factors even at that level, when you're talking about $100 or $200 million, or the flexibility of a digital methodology now to shoot and obtain and capture, there's just too many advantages to it. So it has changed, but really it's all about what your message is to what audience, right? So best you can.
So you shouldn't shoot a toilet being plunged at 1,000 FPS.
Well, yeah, and it depends, right? Is that what they want to see? Are you doing a training video or are you doing a commercial?
True.
That's the option, right? So that's kind of the thing. If you can shoot it at that and then be able to manipulate it and edit so that you can put it out at whatever speed it's supposed to, that's the best way to go.
Cool.
The ramping's cool, though.
Yeah.
They go the regular speed, slow.
All right, so we had a question back here.
Just one more thing on that. It's not the horse, it's the jockey. It's not the camera, it's not the editing system, it's the guy who's driving it. So focus on people, what that person's experience is, and go with talent rather than what gear they have.
Hi, Pistol_Crystal here. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about the creative process that goes into your narrative. Do you have a strategy to engage your consumers with your product in terms of, is it going to be educational? Do you go for entertainment first?
Okay, so we're out there marketing Alberta to the world in a way that we want to attract them to come here and do their production. We want to create an environment where, as they're looking at what we can offer them, they become mesmerized by the scenery. They become engaged by the people. So our message is constantly about where we live and what we can do for them. And so that's the way that our content works. And that's what they want to see. That when you walk into a studio office, you're in front of Warner, they're saying to you, so who do you got and what do you got to show us? That's really the message that we have to get across. So that's what we try to do. And then for our Indigenous folks here, we try to be a little softer. It's a matter of showing what we can do, why we're relevant, and why they should support film and television or digital media rather than seeing it as an interruption in their day. So it's kind of two different messaging. So we're very basic. It's selling to that appropriate audience. I think in Paul's world, it's significantly different.
I can't help but notice these chairs are kind of like what we had in our grandma's house, didn't they? When we pulled up for coffee and donuts. Hey, grandma, how's it going? Got this. No, we always start with it. It depends on who the customer is. Sometimes we'll be hired by the CMO who will just say, this is what I want. These are my key messages. In fact, this is the color scheme that I want to use. Great. Others, particularly the smaller businesses, will say, I know I want to say something here. I know I want to say this, but I just don't know how. And so we work with a wide variety of different customers. And really what Kicker's sort of secret sauce is the ability to break down complex ideas into sort of a simple, easy message to understand. And the best way to do that is to really, and it may seem counterintuitive, but we always work backwards. We always start at the end game. Okay, so what do you want the viewer to feel, think, do at the very end of it? And then work backwards from there, or work forwards from there. And then develop creative around that and the messages around that. That's just the best way to do it. Creative, really, quite frankly, is the last thing we think about. Again, it may seem counterintuitive, but that's not what we